Well, hello, Dolly.
Some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
Cat scratch.
Elizabeth Short has been portrayed many ways in the almost 8 decades since her body was dumped in 2 pieces on an empty lot in Los Angeles. Manipulative playgirl, aspiring starlet, naive cocktease, troubled soul. Above all, time has immortalized Elizabeth Short as the pin-up girl of Los Angeles noir, the Black Dahlia. Fascination with her life, and especially her death, her gruesome, violent, unsolved murder, continues to this day. The story of the unemployed 22-year-old waitress has inspired dozens of books, websites, a video game, and even an Australian swing band. The quest to pinpoint her killer has become a hobby for generations of armchair detectives. The Los Angeles Police Department has all but given up hope of ever closing the Dahlia case. The department has more urgent crimes to investigate, and the killer has likely been dead for years. Yet it is precisely the unsolved status of Elizabeth Short's murder that gives it such an enduring allure. On the morning of January 15, 1947, a housewife named Betty Bersinger was walking down a residential street in central Los Angeles with her 3-year-old daughter when something caught her eye. It was a cold, overcast morning, and she was on her way to pick up a pair of shoes from the cobbler. At first glance, Bersinger thought the white figure laying a few inches from the sidewalk was a broken store mannequin. But a closer look revealed the hideous truth. It was the body of a woman who'd been cut in half and was laying face up in the dirt. The woman's arms were raised over her head at 45-degree angles. Her lower half was positioned a foot over from her torso, the straight legs spread wide open. The body appeared to have been washed clean of blood, and the intestines were tucked neatly under the buttocks. Bersinger shielded her daughter's eyes, then ran with her to a nearby home to call the police. 2 detectives were assigned to the case, Harry Hansen and Finis Brown. By the time the duo arrived at the crime scene, on Norton Avenue between 39th and Coliseum Streets in Los Angeles, it was swarming with reporters and gawkers who were carelessly trampling the evidence. The detectives ordered the crowd to back off, then got down to business. From the lack of blood on the body or in the grass, they determined the victim had been murdered elsewhere and dragged onto the lot, 1 piece at a time. There was dew under the body, so they knew it had been placed there after 2 a.m., when the outside temperature dipped to 38 degrees. The victim's face was horribly defiled. The murderer had used a knife to slash 3-inch gashes into each corner of her mouth, giving her the death grin of a deranged clown. Rope marks on her wrists and ankles indicated she'd been restrained and possibly tortured. By measuring the 2 halves of the corpse, the detectives estimated the victim's height to be 5 feet 6 inches and her weight to be 115 pounds. Her mousy brown hair had been recently henned, and her fingernails were bitten to the quick. After calling the Los Angeles County coroner to retrieve the body, the detectives were left with a daunting assignment: finding out who the woman was. In the 1940s, the police and the press lived in a symbiotic relationship. Reporters used the cops for inside scoops, and the cops used reporters to disseminate information to the public that they hoped would help solve crimes. In the Black Dahlia case, detectives gave the Los Angeles Examiner fingerprints lifted from the dead woman, and reporters used their sound photo machine, a precursor to a modern fax machine, to send enlargements of the prints to FBI headquarters in Washington, D.C. FBI technicians compared the prints with 104 million fingerprints they had on file, and quickly made a match to one Elizabeth Short. Short's fingerprints were taken for a mailroom job she'd had at an army base in California, and for an arrest record for underage drinking in Santa Barbara. The FBI also sent the paper Short's government application photo. When reporters saw how attractive the 22-year-old victim was, they knew they had a sensational tale on their hands. This was news noir at its best. To juice up the story, Examiner reporters resorted to an unethical ploy. They called her mother, Phoebe Short, and told her that her daughter had won a beauty contest. After prying as much personal information about Elizabeth as possible from Mrs. Short, they informed her that her daughter was actually dead. Sex, beauty, violence. The story had it all, and soon made front-page news across the nation. "Police seek mad pervert in girl's death," ran one headline in the Washington Post. Elizabeth Short embodied the feminine ideal of the 40s, with her meaty legs, full hips, and a small, upturned nose. She was drama personified. She dyed her mousy brown locks raven black, painted her lips blood red, and pinned white flowers in her hair. With her alabaster skin and startling light blue eyes, she looked like a porcelain doll. The provenance of her nickname is unclear. Some say her friends started calling her the Black Dahlia because of her fondness for the color black, and in reference to a 1946 movie called The Blue Dahlia. Whatever its genesis, the press ran with it, and doing so made Elizabeth Short a legend. In the town where she grew up, however, she was known simply as Bet, according to her childhood friend and neighbor, Mary Passios. Born on July 29, 1924 in Hyde Park, Massachusetts, Short was one of 5 daughters born to Phoebe and Cleo. At some point during her childhood, the family moved half an hour north to Medford, a town famous for Paul Revere's Midnight Ride in 1775, and as the place where the Jingle Bells was written. Cleo Short launched a successful business building miniature golf courses, but the 1929 stock market crash left him bankrupt. Unable to provide for his large family, Cleo left his car on local bridge to make it look as if he'd jumped into the river in despair, Passios writes in her book, Childhood Shadows. When he wrote his wife from California a few years later, saying he was saving up money to move the family there, his wife wanted nothing to do with him. After Cleo's abandonment, the Short family moved into a meager apartment building next to Passios, and Phoebe found a job as a bookkeeper. Elizabeth became a big sister of sorts to Passios, 10 years her junior, taking her out for ice cream or to the movies. The two girls watched all the Ginger Roger and Fred Astaire flicks that were popular at the time, as well as the debut of Gone with the Wind. Perhaps it was in that small-town theater where Short's Hollywood dreaming began. Short was born with respiratory problems that developed into asthma and bronchitis as she got older. When she was 16, her mother started sending her to spend winters with family friends in Miami, where she found work as a waitress. At 19, Short took a train cross-country to move in with her father, who was living in Vallejo, a city just above San Francisco, and working at the Mare Island Naval Station. She hoped the move to California would enable her to break into movies, Passio writes. From the beginning, Short's newfound relationship with her father was fraught with strife. She hadn't seen him for years. He was haunted by regret. They were strangers living in the same house, with clashing ideas of how things should be. Cleo Short expected his teenage daughter to serve him as a maid of sorts, cooking and housekeeping. But Short was a free spirit who wanted nothing to do with domesticity. She found a job in the mailroom at Camp Cook, now Vandenberg Air Force Base, in Lompoc, 2.5 hours north of Los Angeles. At Camp Cook, Short was surrounded by entire regiments of lonely soldiers on the verge of being sent to war. She left a trail of erotic longing in her wake wherever she walked. The young men clamored for her attention, voted her camp cutie, and told her she was movie star quality. Her idyll came to an end a few months later, however, when she was arrested at a Santa Barbara bar for underage drinking and shipped home to Medford. Over the next couple of years, Short drifted back and forth across the country, taking trains from Medford to Chicago, to Florida, to California, and back to Massachusetts again. Waitressing gigs paid her way wherever she went and fed her compulsion to experience new places and people. Her lust for life was overwhelming. She frequented nightclubs where she swayed across the dance floor to swing jazz and bebop. She loved the music, the men, the atmosphere. She was never alone unless she wanted to be. But on the last day of December 1944, her playgirl lifestyle changed when she met a young man who stood out from the testosterone horde, a major with the Flying Tigers. She sent her mother a gushing letter. Pacios writes, "I met someone New Year's Eve, a major, Matt Gordon. I'm so much in love, I'm sure it shows. He is so wonderful, not like other men, and he asked me to marry him." After Short returned to Medford that summer, Pacios says she wore Matt's pilot's wings pinned to her blouses and started a hope chest, filling it with hand-embroidered linens he sent her from the Philippines. When a Western Union bicycle messenger pedaled toward the Short residence in the late August heat, it was a fate too cruel to contemplate. The Japanese had surrendered on August 14th, and Short had finally stopped worrying that Matt would be killed in combat. Instead, she fantasized about her upcoming nuptials, about the silk wedding gown, the floral arrangements, what canapes to serve at the reception, how to wear her hair. But the bicycle messenger did stop in front of the Short residence, delivering a terse missive from her fiancé's mother. "Matt killed in plane crash on way home from India. My sympathy is with you. Pray it isn't so." Short spent the next days in a funk, reading and rereading Matt's letters. When the Yankee air turned frosty, she returned to Miami, a copy of his obituary tucked into her suitcase. In Miami, Short distracted her heartache with a parade of men. She enjoyed the company of men of every stripe, soldiers, entrepreneurs, older, younger. But the men she enjoyed best were the sort with plenty of spending money in their wallets. Short knew the value of her beauty. As she sashayed down the sidewalk in peep-toed heels, she held her head high, primly aware of her effect on male passers-by. They gawked, they whistled, they offered to buy dinner. Frequently, she accepted. They paid for her meals, bar tabs, rent, clothes. They gave her cash. What were a few greenbacks for the privilege of basking her dazzling aura? Some authors have suggested that Short took this behavior to an extreme and worked as a prostitute, but there is no evidence to back this up. Whatever money she managed to accumulate on her own through waitressing, she used to expand her wardrobe. She'd rather go hungry than wear outdated or worn clothing. When she stepped outside, she was always dressed to the nines, favoring tailored black suits, feminine ruffled blouses, high heels, and long gloves. She embodied the cool sophistication of a 40s working gal. Short had a particular fetish for men in uniform. In July 1946, she returned to Southern California to be close to Joseph Gordon Fickling, an intensely handsome Air Force lieutenant with sensual dark eyes. They'd met in California 2 years earlier, shortly before he was shipped overseas. It was a rocky relationship from the start. In their private letters, which were confiscated by the police and excerpted in newspapers after Short's murder, Fickling expressed impatience with Short's flirtations, wondering if he ranked higher in her heart than any other man. Apparently, she wasn't able, or didn't try, to convince him that he did. He moved to North Carolina to work as a commercial airline pilot, but they stayed in touch, and he continued sending her money, including a $100 wire transfer the month before she died. The last letter Fickling received from Short was dated January 8, 1947, 7 days before her murder. In it, she told him she was moving to Chicago, where she hoped to become a fashion model. In the last 6 months of her life, Short moved constantly between a dozen hotels, apartments, boarding houses, and private homes in Southern California. She crashed for free where she could, paid as little as possible where she couldn't. She was chronically short on cash. From November 13th to December 15th, Short lived in a cramped 2-bedroom apartment in Hollywood with 8 other young women, cocktail waitresses, telephone operators, dime dancers, other out-of-towners who hoped to break into showbiz. The women paid $1 a day for a bunk bed and a couple feet of closet space. But Short couldn't even afford this paltry sum and snuck out a side door to avoid the manager when the rent was due. Her roommates told the LA Times after her death that Short was out with a different boyfriend every night and didn't have a job. She was always going out to prowl Hollywood Boulevard, Linda Rohr, 22, told the paper. Short was elusive in life as she remains in death. She didn't have close friends, male or female, but preferred the company of strangers and a constant change of entourage. The last person to see her alive was a recent acquaintance, a 25-year-old married salesman named Robert Manley, nicknamed Red for his flaming auburn hair. According to press reports, Manley picked her up on a street corner in San Diego. He noticed her standing alone, a beautiful woman with no apparent destination, and pulled over to ask if she wanted a ride. Short played coy, turning her head and refusing to look at him. But Manley kept talking, reassuring her that he was harmless, that he just wanted to help her out, give her a lift home. At the time, Short was staying with a family who took pity on her after finding her at the 24-hour movie theater where she'd gone to spend the night. But they soon got tired of her. She lazed around their small house during the day and spent her evenings out partying. In early January 1947, they asked her to leave. Manley came to pick her up. The pair stayed in a local motel, but Short slept in her clothes, and the pair didn't have sex, he later told a reporter. The next day, January 9th, he drove her to Los Angeles and helped her check her luggage at the bus station. She told him she was going to Berkeley to stay with her sister, whom she was meeting at the Biltmore Hotel downtown. Manley accompanied her into the hotel lobby, but took leave of her at 6:30 p.m. to return to his family in San Diego. The Biltmore was exactly the sort of place Short loved to hang out in. It was as glamorous as she aspired to be, filled with wealthy travelers and luxuriously appointed. Built in the early 20s, it was the largest hotel west of Chicago, with 1,000 rooms. Its lobby was its centerpiece, featuring hand-painted cathedral ceilings, crystal chandeliers, and marble floors. This elegant setting could offer no greater contrast to the dirt lot where her desecrated body was dumped 1 week later. In the wake of her murder, 40 police officers scoured the neighborhood, going house to house looking for clues and evidence. They checked gutters and laundromats for blood-stained clothing, interviewed residents, poked through dumpsters. They gained no solid leads. Investigators tracked down Cleo Short, who was living a mere 3 miles from the dirt lot. He told them he hadn't heard from his daughter in 3 years. He was apparently still angry that she refused to keep house for him when she came to California, but spent her time running around instead. He refused the coroner's request to identify the body. The coroner's office determined that Short had been killed by massive internal hemorrhaging caused by blows to the head. No traces of semen were found anywhere on her body, the coroner's report revealed. It also disclosed a less than becoming detail about Short. Her teeth were in a severe state of decay and plugged with wax. They questioned more than 20 of Short's former boyfriends, but gained no solid leads. After the story hit the newspapers, more than 30 confessing Sams stepped forward, ranging from certified nutjobs to attention-starved losers looking for a moment in the spotlight. The police wasted precious manpower proving they were innocent while searching for the real killer, Detective Hansen complained to the press. His office had to sort through letters from pranksters and wiseacres, writing from as far away as El Paso and the Bronx. He came to theorize that whoever killed Elizabeth Short wasn't someone she knew, but a pickup. The police interviewed thousands of people who had even the slightest knowledge of Short or her acquaintances and quickly stuffed a steel filing cabinet with notes and affidavits. At one point, LAPD investigators were so certain that the clean bisection of Short's body was the handiwork of an expert that they persuaded the University of Southern California, located in the same neighborhood where the corpse was found, to turn over a list of medical students, according to the FBI, which has declassified 203 pages of documents related to its own investigation of the murder. The Bureau was inundated with handwritten letters to J. Edgar Hoover from individuals claiming to know who the murderer was or blaming the crime on someone they held a grudge against. This suspect swindled $75 out of me, which he promised would put me in motion picture and make me famous, one woman wrote the Bureau on May 23, 1947. What happened from the time Short was seen leaving the Biltmore to the time her mutilated body was dumped in the dirt lot remains a mystery. One thing is certain. Sometime during those 7 days, she had a fatal date with her killer, who taunted and tortured her before snuffing out her young life in a horrific fashion. On January 25th, Short's black patent leather purse and one of her black open-toed pumps was found in a dumpster at 1819 East 25th Street, several miles from the crime scene. Robert Manley identified the items as hers. He recognized the shoes because he paid to get them resold in San Diego, and said the handbag smelled of the heavy perfume that Short wore and that had permeated his car as they drove from San Diego to Los Angeles. The 5 daily papers in Los Angeles gobbled up these details in a ferocious competition to outscoop each other. Someone, possibly the killer, mailed a package to the Examiner 9 days after Short's death. It reeked of the gasoline the sender used to erase his or her fingerprints from the envelope. Inside were Short's belongings, including photographs, her birth certificate, social security card, and Matt Gordon's obituary. It also contained an address book containing the names of 75 men. The police quickly tracked them down, and they told investigators a surprisingly similar story. They'd met Short on the street or in a club, bought her drinks or dinner, but never saw her again after she made it clear she was uninterested in a physical relationship. The LAPD has refrained from speculating on the identity of the killer. The truth is that Elizabeth Short's killer is most likely dead, if not of disease, of old age, and will never be brought to justice. This fact hasn't stopped a large group of amateur sleuths from picking up the torch in an attempt to solve the case. Their conclusions range from fanciful to downright risible. Mary Passios pins the blame, incredibly, on movie director Orson Welles, who once did a magic act where he sawed a woman in half. In another book, Daddy was the Black Dahlia killer. A public relations specialist named Janice Knowlton blames her father for the murder. She writes that therapy helped her recover childhood memories of her father, forcing him to torture, murder, and hack up Short. Knowlton goes on to accuse her father of 9 such killings, including that of a son he engendered with her. Her book was a flop, but Knowlton harassed anyone writing about the case who did not support her claims until she committed self-checkout in 2004 with a drug overdose. Here are some of the suspects who've topped the list as the could-haves for the last 75 years. Robert Manley. Manley was the last known person to see Short alive. He was initially booked as a suspect, but released after he passed a polygraph test. Beset by a long history of mental health problems, in 1954, his wife committed him to a psychiatric hospital after he told her he was hearing voices. That same year, doctors gave him a shot of sodium pentothal, aka the truth serum, in another attempt to glean information about the Black Dahlia murder from him. He was absolved a second time. He died in 1986, 39 years to the day after he left Short at the Biltmore. The coroner attributed his death to an accidental fall. Mark Hansen. Hansen's name was embossed on the address book that was mailed to the Examiner. It's unclear how the item fell into Short's hands. The 55-year-old Denmark native was the manager of the Florentine Gardens, a sleazy Hollywood nightclub featuring burlesque acts. Many of the young women working for Hansen lived at his home, which was located behind the club. Short was his guest for several months in 1946, and the aging Lothario is rumored to have tried to bed her, unsuccessfully. George Hoddle. In 2003, a retired LAPD detective named Steve Hoddle published another Daddy Did It tract, but this one became a national bestseller. According to the Black Dahlia Avenger, a genius for murder, Hoddle Jr. depicts his dad as a tyrant and misogynistic pervert who held orgies at the family home and was put on trial for raping his own 14-year-old daughter. He was acquitted. After his father died in 1999, Steve Hodel acquired his father's private photo album, which contained 2 snapshots of a dark-haired woman. Hodel claims the woman was Short, but Short's family has refuted his claims. Jack Anderson Wilson. In Severed, the true story of the Black Dahlia murder, writer John Gilmore points to an alcoholic drifter named Jack Anderson Wilson. When Gilmore interviewed him in the early 80s, Wilson purportedly divulged details about the murder that only the killer would have known, including knowledge of a supposed vaginal defect, which would have prevented Short from having sexual intercourse. A few days before his pending arrest, Wilson died in a hotel fire. The book's validity has been questioned by other Dahlia devotees who have failed to track down many of Gilmore's primary sources, leading them to question the source's very existence. Walter Alonzo Bailey. In 1997, a Los Angeles Times writer named Larry Harnish suggested yet another suspect, Dr. Walter Alonzo Bailey, a surgeon whose house was located 1 block south of the lot where Short's body was found. Bailey's daughter was a friend of Short's sister, Virginia. Harnish theorizes that Bailey suffered from a degenerative brain disease that made him kill Short. While the police believe Short's killer was affiliated with a cutting profession, a surgeon or butcher say, Bailey was 67 at the time of the murder and had no known record of violence or crime. Neither is it known whether he ever met Short. None of these suspects have been endorsed by the LAPD. And because most of the key physical evidence has disappeared from the Black Dahlia file, including 13 scornful letters the killer sent the police and the media, it's unlikely the case will ever be solved. Detective Brian Carr, who inherited it in 1996, has publicly stated as much. In 2006, 6 decades after her death, Elizabeth Short finally made it onto the big screen in a Universal Pictures release based on the 1987 James Ellroy novel, The Black Dahlia. Directed by Hollywood heavyweight Brian De Palma and budgeted at about $45 million, the cast includes Josh Hartnett, Aaron Eckhart, Scarlett Johansson, Hilary Swank, and, as the enigmatic title lady, Mia Kirshner. Short was buried in Oakland's Mountain View Cemetery in a quiet ceremony attended by 6 family members. A handful of cops was also there, on the odd chance that the killer would appear to say one last scornful goodbye to his victim. On a recent trip to the cemetery, Short's grave site would have been impossible to locate without the help of detailed instructions downloaded from the internet. Mountain View Cemetery is large and rambling and offers sweeping views of the San Francisco Bay. After half an hour searching a steep hillside, her plot was found. The modest pink marble headstone marking it was overgrown with crabgrass, and the words engraved on it were simple. Daughter, Elizabeth Short, July 29, 1924. January 15, 1947. Because in the end, she is more than the enigmatic Black Dahlia, more than the unflattering reputation that has dogged her for 6 decades, more than another tragic Hollywood story. She was someone's sister and someone's daughter.
Ha 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 ha!